We give the Swedish fika 1 more minute before I start. Is that okay? What do you think? 30 seconds. Let's start. Hi, welcome to a session about the new version of JavaScript, EcmaScript 6. My name is David, and I work mainly as web development, both back-end and front-end, mostly back-end, but when I do front-end development, it's mostly about JavaScript. And I work at a company called Vujic that has offices all over Sweden, basically. But currently, I don't work. I spend my days with this little fellow on paternity leave and enjoying life as a Swedish dad. Actually, it's more work than regular work. But don't tell the folks that I'm having kids. Okay. I'm going to talk about and code some examples. But what I want you to think about while I'm coding is that everything I use today is you can use when you code today also. Because compared to earlier JavaScript updates or versions, when we had to wait like 5 years until the browsers would catch up with the new technology. Now we have tools that makes it possible to just write our code in the new version and run it in a browser with some help from good tools. And I will talk about and show some of the tools that I use also to solve this. I'm going to skip this slide and go straight into coding. So I'm going to write some example code here and output it in the Chrome developer console. I'm going to try to write simplified examples just to show you some of the new features of EcmaScript 6. All right? yeah, and I have some magic going on here in the background. I will talk about that in a while, okay? Let me just check that everything works. Refresh the browser, good. It seems to have updated. One new feature that I really like is I have a setup an HTML file over here and a JavaScript file that is loaded to that HTML file. So when I write something here, this will pop up over here. And one feature that I really like is we have now new ways to declare things like variables, functions, objects. And that solves a problem that has been in JavaScript since like the beginning of time. Let me give you an example. I have my variable declaring with a var keyword. This. And I have to print it out like this. Okay. Then let's say that I have another variable, an array, with some values in it. Like this. And I want to do stuff with that array. I want to grab each data item in that array. And I will do a for loop. I'm declaring a local kind of counter. And as long as the counter is less than the length of the array, I will increment it. And then I will do my things, the things that I want to do here. And maybe I would like to store that current index, that current item in a temporary variable. Like this. And do things, but for now I'm just going to output it. TMP, like this. Oh, sorry. So, and I just print out the array here. These variables, especially this one, my intention is clear with this. I want to use it only within this for loop. But, and this is something that I have discovered when I have created bugs in my JavaScript code and kind of discovered the way JavaScript handles variables. And I don't know, maybe you have run into the same issue, but because when I'm outside of this for loop, I can actually access this temporary variable. It will output the last value of that the for loop gave me. And this is the way JavaScript behaves. So this isn't really a surprise, but to me it was a surprise before I understood it, because I come from a server-side programming background, like in C#. And this is because how JavaScript, my code is interpreted or parsed, is that it will look for all my declarations in the code and actually push them up to the top. And it's the top of the current context that I'm in currently. Let's say that I would have this code in a function. All my declarations will be pushed up to the top of that function. If I would have had it in a script tag in a web browser, it would be pushed up as far up as you can. So close to the script tag as you can. So behind the scenes, JavaScript does this to our declarations. Like this. And actually removes that var keyword. So if we look at the code like this would make perfect sense, because the temp variable is declared globally, and I will access it from all of the code. But the new ways of EcmaScript solves this kind of problem when I want to have variables used in some scope, and that is by using the let keyword. like this. Then I can remove and when I say I actually got an error, something happened in the background, and you see Sublime takes my editor and actually tells me that something has went wrong. TMP is notified. That is because I tried to access it from the outside. If I try to run this again, it seems to work. And the same goes for this variable I. It stays within the scope of the for loop. And a scope is basically these curly brackets. So if I want to create a scope that isn't a for loop or something like that, I can actually write something like this and declare my variable inside. And it will only be accessed within these curly brackets. With EcmaScript 6, I can actually declare a variable with the same name as a variable in the global scope. Like this. And if I want to print it out, and still keep that printed out value at the bottom here, it will actually treat this x as a local scope variable, and this x down bottom here as a global variable. And I don't think Java or C# has this kind of scoping. Do you know that? Can you reuse the same variable name in Java? Yeah. Okay. Because in C# that's not possible. Really? No. If you have a method and you declare like bar x, and you have a for loop, you can't write bar x in that for loop. Maybe Java can do that. I don't know. No, you can. Okay. Cool. Then it's probably inspired by Java, this feature. Okay. So this was a new feature called length. I'm going to delete all this. And I think this new stuff will help us be more productive and probably help us create lesser bugs. Because I think, especially if you come from a server-side background, the mindset of scoping is very like in our head. And another feature that perhaps is not that useful, but more of a cool new feature or a kind of eye candy stuff is we have some new ways of writing functions. So if I'm going to write a function like we are used to in JavaScript, that accepts a number of characters like this, and then it does something with code. Let's say that I just return value times 2, like this. And somewhere in the code I will use this one. Like this. Oh, sorry. Forgot to say that. This one is mine. So, this is just a regular JavaScript function. But now we can actually skip the function keyword itself. We can write like this and replace it with an arrow. So we have arrow functions. And I don't know if this perhaps will create readability, but I guess it also can create some weird code style also if you use it too heavily. So I would suggest a combination of using the function keyword or the arrow, because the function keyword is still there. It just hasn't been removed. Very much like the bar keyword, it's still there. It's usable. And a function that only consists of one line, like this, you do some sort of computation and return that value, can actually be made even shorter. You can start by removing the curly braces, like this, and actually remove the return keyword itself. Because if you write a one-liner like this will actually mean that the value computed here will be returned by the function. So it's a shorthand for writing functions. And if you have only one parameter like I have here, you don't have to use these parentheses. So if you have one parameter, you can write your functions like this. So the result is way shorter than the way we are used to writing functions. And I think this is pretty cool. If you have a one-line function, this is quite useful feature. If you have no parameters, then you just write like this. If you have more than one parameter, then you need those parentheses and separated by comma, just like one would expect. And I'm going to go back to this one parameter style. Let me change this function a bit. I'm going to say that I want a string instead. And I want to, whatever the user passes in, I will make that to uppercase. Like this. And instead, I will pass in hello JPEGs. Like this. So, we got a simple function that does one thing. I'll rename it to upper. But what will happen if the consumer of my magic function forgets to pass in a value? I will generate an error because I try to run a method on an object that doesn't exist, obviously. And in the current version, or like the old school JavaScript version, is to do some sort of checking of your input parameters. Parameters. Is it undefined? Is it null? Is it true or false? Or things like that. But with functions in EcmaScript 6, we can actually specify a default value. So if the user forgets to, the consumer of my function forgets to pass in, I have some sort of guard that actually prevents my code compression. Now we'll try to do now it's an empty string and it's not undefined object. Okay. So that was some additions to how we want to write functions. And I think it's very similar to like the lambda style coding we have in Java and C#. The rubric is also.
So it's similar to JavaScript.
Yeah. This is heavily inspired from JavaScript. Okay, so let's say that I'm so happy with my magic upper function, so I want to reuse it in my code base. And one way of doing it is storing it in a module. And in the current version, in the kind of old school JavaScript version, you need, at least in the browser, you need some sort of framework, like require.js. How many here has worked with require.js? Okay. And require.js has a special syntax for defining modules and injecting modules to the web. But with EcmaScript 6, we have the module feature built in. And I think, to me, it looks like a combination of the module system we have for the browser, require.js AMD style, and the module system that is in Node, which is common JS style of writing it and importing it. It's somewhere in between. I think actually this way is the EcmaScript way is more elegant than both of them. And so I'm just going to cut this function, create a new file, place it in a folder, and I will name it upper.js, and paste that function to my model. And all code I write here in this file is private. The outside world cannot access any of this code. So this is a kind of separate context. So and to make things public, you have to export them. And with EcmaScript 6, we use a keyword called export, like this. And what is, as I have interpreted this committee that actually has written the specification for EcmaScript 6, is that they recommend that each module that they create only has one export. Export just one thing, a function, an object, or something. But you can export how many things you like. You just add the export to your variables or functions, like this. So now this module has two interfaces, or the module API has two things that we can use. But what is recommended is to have one export, and that one is the default export. So this is what, as I have interpreted, the recommended way of creating a module and how you export things. And the good side of writing your modules like this is that the consumers of your module has very little syntax to write. If you export one thing and call it default. So if I go back to my app.js and I want to use my upper function, my module, then I use the import. And I use the same name as I have chosen here, so upper. So I choose to import upper from somewhere, and that string is basically a file path without the file extension. So that is how E6 can find the module and create an instance. And that is very similar to how require.js works and home.js. It's a string with basically a file. This. So now I should be able to consume this. Just like okay. Does it make sense? Yeah. If you want to import more than one thing, then you have to write a little bit more code here. Then you have to use curly braces and add, give your imports names. So if you have one export, then you have very simple syntax. I guess Douglas Crockford has been involved with this because he likes very simple syntax. He's kind of he uses this dictator style of coding. I don't know, that's my guess. Okay, so that was how much time do I have? No, that was markets. And there's another feature that probably is the most controversial feature in the history of time, or at least the history of JavaScript. That is that we can now write classes in JavaScript. Yes. And to me, it seems that like the JavaScript community or the developers JavaScript developers either think that classes suck because functions and functional programming is way much better, or the other half, I think, thinks that finally we have classes in JavaScript because every other programming language in the world has classes. Why not JavaScript? And if you just Google for classes in JavaScript, you will find so many strong emotions and like voices that doesn't compromise. This is so bad, or this is great. So if you have some time to spend on reading what people think, so just Google for classes in JavaScript. Create a new file. Call it myclass.js. And a class is written with a class key. Like this. And I put it in a module, so I'm just going to export it. And if I want to consume this class, if I go back to my app.js, I'm going to write it in the same way. This. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, it was too fast. I'm going to save it. And then it's very similar to like Java and C# code. I have my instance from the my class, like this. And currently this doesn't do anything, so let's add some sort of method to it. My name. And this is how you write a method in JavaScript classes. Okay. And this is how it exists. Double check. Seems to work. Good. So, just bring it out. So JavaScript has, so each method that you write is public. And we also have constructors in JavaScript classes, but unlike other languages, we actually use the constructor keyword for the constructor. So like this. We don't use the class name. This is what happens when we create an instance of this class. Okay. And if you want to add parameters to a class, you hook them up, you add them to the current object, the current instance of the class by using this keyword. then you can access it from the outside world like this. So everything, all properties that you add to this object will be public. And so far, it's really by default possible to create private variables in the way we are used to in other languages. And I think that sucks. So in that area, I will stand by the ones who think classes suck, because if you have a class functionality, I think there are some expectations from how they should work based on experiences in other languages. You can simulate the private variable behavior, but that's kind of a way of rounding the problem. So, but I guess this is just the first step, and already next year EcmaScript 7, I think, will be released. Maybe enhancements to classes will be added there. I'm not sure. What I would like to do is to be able to, just like in a server-side language, add stuff. Something like this, and keep them private. But that's not possible yet in EcmaScript. So be aware that everything you add here is public. So that itself is probably maybe functions and closures are in favor of that, because that's by using closures and functions you can have that behavior, private variables, functions, methods, whatever you want, and expose the things that you do. So it's, I think many developers will be surprised by this. I will share a link to where I have information and some blog posts, and I have written about a possible solution to writing classes, because since I like JavaScript, like many JavaScripts, really don't like using the newing up stuff like this spread over all of the code base. In C# it's an anti-pattern almost. We use dependency injection and things, and service indicators and stuff like that. And I think a design pattern for JavaScript could be that the things that you export should be some sort of singleton-like behavior, or that you export a maker function that will provide you a new instance. The maker function will new up class for you. That way, your API is not dependent on that you have written it like a class or like a JavaScript object literal. The consumer just have the instance dot and use the methods. Yeah.
Can we take questions now?
Sure.
No, I just wonder about classes, because they don't seem to add very much. I mean, over regular handle. So it's just like syntactical sugar.
Yeah. Yes. Because what happens behind the scene, this is a kind of wrapper. I think what is happening is that it creates a function construction. It creates a function that you new up, and you have this bound to that instance. So it's just syntactical sugar. I guess it's something that I don't know why. Yeah.
No, it is, yes, as I said before, about classes, I kind of think about.
Yeah, good.
But even if you write a class like this, can you still export it like regular JSON? I mean, is there like some native way to do that, or?
Like regular JSON?
Let's say you just want to pass a class to a server. I mean, when you write server side, is it going to be parsed like regular JSON, or?
Don't know. I think one upside to having classes is that if you use inheritance, maybe you have your you want some kind of a structure, and maybe using classes and inheritance is something more intuitive. I don't know, but because you can extend by use this extend keyword and my object. Maybe to some developers this is more logical and make your code go structured way.
So that approach supports polymorphism, then, so you indirectly have interfaces.
Not interfaces really.
No, but like indirectly you get interfaces in a way.
Yes. And you can override the methods and stuff by calling super and stuff like that. So. Okay, this is classes. Okay. So how does all these things work? As you've seen, I write some code and I can just refresh my browser. So what is happening? I know Chrome supports already some ES6 features, but we live in a multi-browser world, so we can't rely on that the browser should support ES6. That will take 5 years probably. But what I'm using is something called a transpiler. If you have used TypeScript or CoffeeScript, how many has are using one of those tools? Okay. Then you're probably familiar with this idea. You write something in one language, and then you have then you transpile it to JavaScript. I guess they use the word transpile because it's somewhere in between transformation and compilation. It's not from a high level to a low level language. It's from a high level language to another high level language. So I guess these. I think it's transcompilation actually, the longer version of that word. And one of the transpilers there is Babel. It's pronounced Babel. And I think there are a couple of transpilers. I guess they are about the same. Have the same functionality, but I think Babel has more support for ES6 feature. It almost covers all the specification. Just some few percents left that this doesn't cover yet. You'll find all information on the website. And Babel is you install Babel as a Node package. I'm not a Node developer, but by using this tool, I'm slowly learning about Node. And I think it's a good idea because I want to learn Node, but and this gives me a reason to learn. So I would recommend to use this out. And Babel is a command line tool. So you call it, you specify your source code, your ES6 code, and you specify your destination where the transpiled code should be. Then you can configure the transpilation depending on where you are going to use it. I'm going to use my code in the browser, so I'm telling Babel to create modules in the AMD style. That is, it will require JS modules for me. And the things maybe you saw that. This code running in the background. This is actually a tool because what I don't want to do is to write some code, go to a console, run Babel, and go back. I want this to occur automatically. And for that, I use a build tool called Go, which can do a lot of things. And what I do is I check for syntax errors using a linting tool, jsynth. I transpile the code and I run the unit test. You can do a lot of things with Go. That means that I don't have to leave my editor. I can write code without going back to the console and do a manual transpiling. So this is what happens in the background. It transpiles my source code, it does some linting, it runs my unit tests, so on. And this page is an HTML page, of course, and it looks like this. So I have the only old school JavaScript code I have to write is actually this one. I need to kickstart my transpiled source in some way. So I just call require to my app.js, and it's the transpiled version of my ES6 code. So it's a code that works in every browser today. And the way it finds my app is that I have configured it in a require, just a regular require JS config. Over here. I pointed to the folder transpile, where I have all my files, transpiled files. And what I need to add is two things. First, I'm adding a little helper library that Babel has, that the people from Babel have written. Because what is different, different from other transpilers, I think, is that Babel produces quite nice JavaScript, readable JavaScript. If you have used TypeScript or CoffeeScript, the JavaScript transpiled it's a lot of code. Compared to CoffeeScript, you get this amount of JavaScript. But somehow they have managed to generate or transpile JavaScript that actually looks quite good. And to be able to do that, you need to polyfill some features, like some new objects in JavaScript, like string functions and stuff like that. And then I include my the require JS framework. So that's all I have to do. I can just kickstart my this. Okay. Do I have like 5 minutes left, or?
Officially, we have until 1:15, so since it's the last lecture of the evening.
Okay. I'll speed up.
No, sorry.
So I think this workflow is. I think it's quite nice. You stay in your EcmaScript 6 world code like you want to do. Let your build tool do the manual work, and you have the transpiled code in the browser. So I think this is ready for production. Babel is in a stable. And I have written a couple of unit tests also, because I like test-driven development. If I open the test runner, because when I have learned about ES6, one of all the features, I've always have had this question in the back of my head: can I test it? Because I use test-driven development in my daily work. I think that's a good idea. And it turns out that the answer is yes, you can. There are some things that you have to think about. If you remember the importing of modules, it's if you have a module that imports another module, you would have a dependency to some source code. So maybe this import-export stuff isn't really testable in some cases. So in that way, maybe you should export on some sort of inject method that will let your consumer inject all your dependency. I have written a blog post about that. I will show you the links to it. And I use QUnit as my unit testing tool, because I like the style of QUnit. It's kind of raw TDD. I like the phrase test. I like the phrase assert. I like the simplicity of QUnit. But there's some things that you have to think about to be able to use it with modules. Is that you need these three lines. You need to pause QUnit and start it when the module is loaded. That's the only thing you have to think about, because QUnit doesn't yet support modules. It isn't yet a module. So that's the thing you need to think about. Then I can write, by doing this, I can write my my unit test in ES6 too, because that's the way I want to do it. I could write unit tests in the old school JavaScript, but then I would kind of switch between the two languages, and I want this nice flow, staying in the same language, write some tests, write the code, go back to my test without any kind of context switching. So in this unit test, I use arrow functions. I use the const keyword. I didn't talk about that, but that is a new way of declaring variables, constants. And I use imports. I import the module that I want to test. Okay. And this unit testing setup is my little experiment. And if you have the time and interest, please go to my GitHub page. I will show you the link and try it out and find bugs and scenarios that I may have missed, because I'm letting the transpiler transpile both the unit test and the source code, and let the transpiled versions interact. So maybe that's a bad idea, but I hope you will give me that feedback. So I'm going to wrap up this with I have my GitHub page dedicated to this session. All the source code here, all the structure that I use, the tools, the Gulp file, the setup for JSON, the tests, the library, and some links to my posts about ES6, and some posts that I recommend you to read.